Hey there, my name is David, and I will be your Linode developer advocate for this video. In fact, this series even. This is actually the second video in a series of let's call it a hybrid self-hosting solution, because not everybody can self-host like we talk about on my YouTube channel. So I teamed up with Linode to kind of give folks an option on how they might be able to be in better control of their data, even if they can't self-host. So if you'd like to follow along with this series, definitely check out the link in the description down below where you'll find the first video of this series. And while you're down there, there should also be a link to get a $100 credit for 60 days on Linode to try Linode out for free, just to see if this is something that you'd like to check out for yourself. Now, the first video that we did in this series was kind of long. We set up a Docker Linode, we pointed a domain name to it, we installed NGINX Proxy Manager, and we installed Portainer. So it was a lot to cover in the first video. So let's take all of that stuff that we've already done and make it usable, and let's actually install something called Vaultwarden, which is a Bitwarden alternative based on Bitwarden, just written in Rust, that we can self-host so that we can have our own self-hosted, semi-self-hosted password manager on Linode. So with all of that said, let's jump over to my desktop and take a look at how easy it is to get Bitwarden set up and on a domain name. So here we are on my dashboard, and here we can see that we've got a Linode tutorial up here. And if we come into here, we can see, all of the information relevant to this Linode that we set up in that previous video. The first thing I think we want to do here is actually head over to our domains. But first, we want to make note of this IP address, this 45.79.14.131. We're going to jump over here to domains, and we're going to find the domain name associated with that. It looks like it's this one right here. What I want to do is actually set up a subdomain for our password manager, for our Vaultwarden instance here. So what I want to do, just to keep things simple, is actually set up a CNAME record for that subdomain, just so that it will then kind of be attached to the domain without having to put in IP addresses and all of that nonsense. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. What we're going to do is come down to where it says add a CNAME record. And then in the host name, basically, we want to think about what do we want our subdomain to be. I think for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to make this PW for the subdomain. So I think password. That was kind of my logic for that particular thing there. For the alias, what we're going to do is we're just going to put in the @ symbol. So that will reflect the root domain, in this case, dbtech.tips. So overall, our URL for this password manager will be pw.dbtech.tips for this. We can leave the TTL, that's time to live, as its default. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And now we have a CNAME record set up for our password manager. Now that that's done, though, we can actually move over to getting Bitwarden, or I guess actually Vaultwarden, installed on our Docker system here so that we can access this password manager. So let's do that next. Let's come over to our Linodes, and let's go into here so that we can get this URL, or sorry, this IP address. Let's just go ahead and click on the little clipboard right there. We click that, it says copied. We can paste that in and go to port 9000. And then we can get logged in. So here we are, we're logged into our Portainer. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to use Portainer for this. You could, if you wanted to, do everything through command line. But for the sake of simplicity, I know a lot of people who are just getting into self-hosting are a bit afraid of the command line. And I get that. I was there too. There are still times where I prefer a graphical user interface or a GUI to do some of these things. It just makes me, kind of puts me back in a comfort zone that I've been in for a long time. So that's what we're going to take a look at first. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click right here, right in the middle of the page. And here we can see, again, we've got a couple of different containers listed. Again, we've got Portainer and we've got NGINX Proxy Manager. So what we want to do is actually come over here to stacks, because we're going to basically, Portainer calls Docker Compose files stacks. I'm not sure what the correlation is there, how those names diverged, but they did. And so we're going to use a Docker Compose in here. What we're going to do is go to add stack like so, and then we're going to copy and paste some stuff in here. So I think the first thing we want to do here is actually give this a name. I'm going to call this Vaultwarden. Oops, if I could type like so, and then I'm going to paste this in. So basically what we have here, if we come over to hub.docker.com, there is this installation right under here where we've got a couple of commands. And so basically if you take this docker run-d name, Vaultwarden, all of this stuff, we come over here to composerize and we delete this and paste that in. We get something that looks like this. I've taken that and modified it just ever so slightly to fit my needs here. So what we want to do is kind of take a look at this, and we'll start at the top and work our way down and kind of explain what's going on here. So Docker Compose has a version. Different versions have different capabilities. For the sake of what we're doing here, version 2 will work just fine. Below that, under that, we've got services, and basically services will be all of the different containers that are listed in this Docker Compose, or in this case, this stack. So in this case, we've only got one service, that is Vaultwarden. And that's what's listed here on line 3. Line 4 is saying, hey, what image do we want to download from hub.docker.com? In this case, it will be vaultwarden/server. And then at the end of that, where it says :latest, that is a tag. And with tags, you can specify different versions of Docker images if different versions are available. It's very, very common to use the latest tag. However, if you needed to use a specific version of a Docker container, you could put that version in there. Of course, you'd want to find that over here. If we come over here to where it says tags on this page, we can see that there are a bunch of different tags available. We've got testing Alpine, latest ARM32v6. So we would just put any of those different tags in there. However, the latest tag in this particular instance will work just fine for what we want to do here. Below that, we're going to give this container a name with the item right here, container name. Of course, we're going to just name that Vaultwarden. You could name that whatever you'd like, but that's what we're going to name it. Next, we've got networks. This is on lines 6 and 7. Now, I copied and pasted this from some notes I've got somewhere else, but we want to make sure that this network is actually correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to where it says networks, and I'm going to open that link in a new tab, just so I can see the actual name of the network here, and that is NGINX Proxy Manager _default. That's the network that we want to attach to this container to. So NGINX Proxy Manager _default there. And it looks like NGINX Proxy Manager _default. That's what we've got. We're good to go. So below that, we've got some volumes, or a volume rather. Basically, where do we want our data to be stored on our server? Now, with a basic server like we've set up here, I like to store things in home/docker/container name. If you opted to get the additional volumes attached to your Linode, you may want to map it to that instead. For the sake of simplicity, just because we're kind of getting started with a semi-self-hosted solution here, we're going to keep things simple. So the volume, the first half of this is where this will reside on our actual physical server, our actual Linode. Everything after the colon is where that gets mapped to inside the container. So that's just saying, hey, these two areas need to link up together. And that's what we've got on line 9 there. Below that, we've got port. We've actually got 2 ports. It's the same port, but again, it's where is it going to be on our Docker server versus where will it be on the inside of the container? Now, we don't want to use port 80 because port 80 is being used by NGINX Proxy Manager. So we really want to change this to something else. I like to change it to 90 just because that's what I do with Vaultwarden for some reason. And again, that will just be on the Docker side of things. On the inside of the container will use port 80. So below that, we have a restart policy. Basically, this is just saying if you encounter an issue, just restart. Below that, we're just saying, hey, we've got a network that we need to attach to, in this case, NGINX Proxy Manager, and it is an external network because it's already been created. It seems a little convoluted, but that network exists. It's already been created, so technically it's external. So that's what all of that means. Once we're happy with all of this, what we can do is scroll down to where it says deploy the stack and click deploy the stack. Hopefully we don't get any red error messages up here at the top right corner, and this should deploy fairly quickly.
A few moments later.
Okay, so now we have Vaultwarden. It looks like it is done. That actually didn't take very long at all. So if we click this, we can see that it is starting. If we want to see what the status of that happens to be, we can click on the little logs icon right there. And here we can see that it's running migration for the database. It's created a public and a private key, and it looks like it is deployed on port 80. So let's refresh the page here. So it still says that it is starting. So let's do something I actually forgot to do in the last video. So what we want to do is actually come over here to the environments and click on local. I really should have done this in the last video, and I forgot. So where it says public IP, we're going to put that in as 45.79.14.131. Of course, yours will be different than that, but that's what it is for my setup. So that's what we're going to run with. I'm going to click update the environment there, and then we're going to come back to our containers. And hopefully, there we go. Vaultwarden is up and running. So if I click that, here we are. Now we've got Vaultwarden. However, the problem that we're going to run into right now is if we were to try to log in, create an account, or anything like that, it's going to throw an error saying that this browser needs HTTP access in order to access or in order to do anything with this container. So even though we've got the container up and running, there's a couple more steps that we need to do. So what we want to do here is actually come up to our address bar up here and switch this to port 81. Again, that is for NGINX Proxy Manager. So what I'll do now is I will go ahead and get logged in there. All right. So here we are on our NGINX Proxy Manager dashboard. The first thing that I like to do in this case, because we're going to be using an SSL from Let's Encrypt, I actually like to create that first just to avoid any possible issues later on. So what we're going to do is come over here to SSL certificates. We're going to add an SSL certificate, and we're going to click Let's Encrypt right there. And then we're going to put in the domain name that we've set up a moment ago earlier in this video. We're going to put in that domain name and then test the server reachability to make sure that all of this stuff has happened with the domain name that needs to happen. So we're going to put in pw.dbtech.tips and press enter. If we don't press enter and do something else, that will just go away. So we're going to click test server reachability. It looks like we're good to go there. So I'm just going to copy that because we're going to need it here in a minute anyway. I'll click close. You can put in your email address there. And if you want to put in a DNS challenge, you can. You don't need to in this case, but we want to say that we agree to the terms of service as long as we actually agree to the terms of service. Once we're good with all of this, we can click save. And then here, like it says, it may take a few minutes. It's going to generate an SSL and install it in our NGINX Proxy Manager reverse proxy.
A few moments later.
Okay, so now we have our SSL certificate generated via Let's Encrypt, again, via our NGINX Proxy Manager. So the next thing we want to do is actually come over here to hosts. We're going to click on proxy hosts. We're going to add a proxy host, and then we're going to paste in our domain name there. Our scheme is going to stay HTTP in this particular instance because the container doesn't have an SSL, a self-signed SSL built into it. So in that case, we're going to leave the scheme as HTTP. Our forward hostname /IP. Now, under different circumstances, we would put in the IP address of our server. However, we're not going to do that here. What we're going to do is actually come back over to Portainer. We're going to grab the IP address of our Vaultwarden listed right here under IP address. Like so, and then we're going to come back over to here and paste that in. And again, something else that's a little convoluted, but it's just how things work. So when we deployed our container, we said that we wanted this to be on ports 90 on the outside and 80 on the inside. So basically with 90, and because we're putting this all on the same network, each container is getting an IP address on that network. So the 90 was just to keep things from going haywire. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use port 80 there for that particular IP address. So we're going to leave this as port 80 here. We're going to click cache assets. We're going to block common exploits, and we're going to allow WebSocket support. Below this, there's an option for an access list. The idea with an access list with NGINX Proxy Manager is that when you create an access list, you can put restrictions in place that will only allow certain IP addresses to access your domains. You can put in so that somebody would have to put in a username and a password to even get to your domain. So for the sake of simplicity, we're going to leave the access list as publicly accessible. However, if you wanted to, you could absolutely create your own access lists and make it so that only certain people, certain usernames, certain IP addresses or whatever can access your domains, which is a great idea for an extra level of security. However, if you try to access this on your phone from somewhere remote, your IP address might change. So there's some things you've got to take into consideration when it comes to access lists. So again, for right now, we're just going to leave this as publicly accessible. The next thing that we want to do here is click on SSL. We're going to select the SSL that was generated just a moment ago, and we're going to check all of these boxes to make sure that so that we make sure that the SSL is actually forced into place. Once we're happy with that, we can click on save. it says that it's online. So let's click our URL right here. And right there we go. So now we have Bitwarden up and running on an SSL. If we look up here at the top left-hand corner, we've got our little padlock right there. And if we click that, it says connection is secure. The certificate is valid. And right here, we can see that it was issued by R3, which is attached to Let's Encrypt. So let's go ahead and click OK here. And the next thing that we want to do is create an account. Now, there is an option in the setup when we're actually building our Portainer. I clicked over to Portainer. My brain went weird on me for a second. So if we click on Stacks and we click on Vaultwarden, and we click on our editor up here, there are environmental variables that we can add to this if we wanted to that would allow us to disable registration. However, make sure you don't try to enable that before you create your account. You want to have at least one account in there, hopefully the account you're going to be using, before you redeploy this container with that environmental variable. We're not going to cover that here, but just know that if you wanted to, you could absolutely add an environmental variable there that would allow you to disable registration. But don't do that until you've created at least one account. Otherwise, you've defeated the whole purpose of creating the container. So now that we've got all of that done here, what we'll do is we're just going to fill in the blanks right here so that we can create our account. Now, for the sake of security, of course, I've entered a password. It's good. It's not great. Again, this is just for tutorial purposes here. Where it says password hint and it says optional, I advise one of two things. One, don't put anything here at all. Two, if you want to put something here, don't put anything relevant. Just because it's too easy to do kind of social engineering to get information from people on social media that might be able to answer this question and get in. So I would honestly leave this blank, like it says optional there, and then we can click on submit. Now, if we look up at the top right-hand corner here, it says your account has been created. You may now log in. So that's cool. Let's do that. And now we are logged in. Of course, I've got Vaultwarden up and running on my browser already. So basically, our password manager is installed. It's set up. It's ready to go. It's secured on an SSL and a domain name. So very, very easy setup with that. However, of course, you may want to make your life even easier by integrating this into your browser. So in order to integrate this into your browser, I'm not going to go through all the browsers, but basically if your browser has an app store, go to that app store and look for the Bitwarden plugin, extension, whatever your browser calls it, and install that. Once you've done that, you should see a little icon that looks like this up in the wherever your browser happens to show this stuff. You're going to click it, and then up in the top left-hand corner, you're going to click Settings. And then what you'll do is you'll put in your server's URL. So that's the URL that we just created. So it's going to be HTTP, like so, actually, // let me move my mouse, and it's pw.dbtech.tips, like so, and then we'll click Save. And then it says that the environmental URL has been saved, so we'll click Login. And we'll go ahead and put in our username and password. And now we're logged in. Now, of course, there's nothing here. This is a brand new install, so there's not going to be anything in there. However, there are a few other things that I want to cover with Vaultwarden with our self-hosted, semi-self-hosted setup here. And that is, if we come up to the top, you can send passwords to people. You've got options to generate passwords here, import data, export data. Actually, I highly encourage this. About once a month, I would say export your vault, store that somewhere safe on a USB drive, encrypt it if you want to be extra protected. But I would say about once a month, run an export of your setup here just to make sure that if anything goes wrong, you've still got a backup of your passwords. Also, if you're coming from a third-party solution, like LastPass or KeyPass or whatever you happen to be using right now, you can export that and then actually import that data via any of these. Here's actually a great list of all of the different things that have got a pretty good standard import solution from. So you can export from that, where you're probably paying a few bucks a month for it, import it into this and have access to it here. You can run checks to see if any of your passwords have been exposed. There's all kinds of real cool stuff in here. What I really want to focus on, though, is coming over here to settings. And So basically, when you're here, you can update your name, your password hint. You can change your email. You can change your master password. You can also rotate your account's encryption key when you do that. Highly advise that. You can change your encryption key settings here. And there's an API key, and you can also delete your account if you want to do that. But if we come over here to options, you've got security options for how do you want, or how long do you want to have before your Vault times out? Do you want it to lock or log out? All kinds of stuff in here. Organizations, if you wanted to set up, say, a password manager for your small business, you could set up different organizations. Like, let's say you had accounting and development and design and whatever. You could actually put people into different organizations and allow them to share passwords with each other fairly seamlessly using organizations. We're going to skip two-step login because I want to come back to that. Domain rules, basically, these are going to be equivalent domains. So if you go to Ameritrade.com, it also translates to TDAmeritrade.com, Sprint PCS, Nextel, those are all the same. So there's a bunch of those, already in here. You can add your own if you want to do that. Just know that that is kind of what the equivalent domains is for, or the domain rules, more specifically. You can enter a new custom domain there if you want. Emergency access. Let's say the worst happens, you get hit by a bus. You can have somebody be a designated emergency contact who will have access to this if something should happen and you want to give somebody access to that in that event. So that's kind of all of the quick and dirty stuff I wanted to touch on. What I really want to touch on here is two-step login. I can't encourage this enough. Two-factor authentication, especially when it's something like a password manager, is so crucial. Whether you use an authenticator app on your phone or you've got a dedicated hardware key that I always forget to keep on me. It's in the house. It's in the other room, but it's a little USB key that you then have to plug in and touch in order to authenticate that yes, you are who you say you are. I cannot encourage two-step login enough. Everybody should be using it. But there you go. There is how to set up Vaultwarden as a password manager, a semi-self-hosted password manager in this case, so that you don't have to rely on, all of those other providers who are doing some real weird things out there with how they're running their business. So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, do me a favor, give the video a thumbs up. Really does help out the channel quite a bit. Also, get subscribed if you're interested in more content like this. If you've got other things that you'd like to see self-hosted semi-self-hosted on Linode, let me know. I'd be happy to take a look at that and possibly make a video about it. Also, I'd mentioned earlier that there will be some resources available in the description. Again, check out the link below in the description to get $100 for 60 days to check out Linode with no obligation. So hopefully, again, you found the video helpful. I want to thank you for your time, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.